Hi everyone, so welcome back to my latest video. Today I'm going to show you how to make a Cymbidium Orchid. I happen to have one in flower at the moment, so I'm going to adjust my camera. As you know, I'm the cameraman as well, and I'll show you which one it is. Right, so first of all I'll show you a picture of the orchid that I'm going to do, which is this one here, that I have in flower at the moment. Unfortunately my colour's gone a bit wrong here on the top while I've been printing it. So I had an accident with my Cymbidium Orchid yesterday, moving the table it was on. I should have taken it off, knocked it over and knocked one of the flowers off. So I've lost some petals on it, but it's still got two petals attached. So just to show you, here is the actual orchid throat and the petals. As you can see, it seems to get colour on just on the side of the petals on this particular variety. I've already made some up ready to put into a spray, so here is the ones that I've made in sugar, just to show you the difference. The colours aren't exactly the same, but I've got them as near as I can. So I'll just pop that back in the water. I hate throwing things away when you knock flowers off and that. I like to keep them in some water. I'm a bit obsessive about things like that. I've dropped a bit of water on there, so we'll get rid of that. Right, so start off with, these are the cutters that I'm using. That one is actually wrong, I couldn't find the proper cutter to go with it, so I've had to substitute one of the cutters to get the nearest I can. If you haven't got orchid cutters, and I have done some of the flowers that I've already made, you can use a lily cutter. So what you want is a wide petal and a narrow petal, and you could use that. You'd have to make a template for the throat part of the orchid, but the column part I'm going to show you how to make it by hand, and also I have a mould that you can use to make your column with. This comes in a set with a lot of different side petals and things like that. Just for ease, I'm going to just use one part of the set to do mine. I'm not going to use all the different parts because it'll make it confusing for people that don't have the cutters, the veiners rather. And also as well, if you haven't got a veiner, then you can use your trusty silk veining tool that I've used in all my other videos. So if you go back to my other videos and have a look there, you can see the tool that I've used for that. Anyway, we'll get on with it. So basically what we need are two lateral sepals, which are the two wide petals here, and then you need three of the narrow petals, plus your column, which is this part here. This is actually done with the mould, and then I'm going to show you both ways, with the mould and without the mould. And to colour this orchid, I've done it a cream colour, so I've started off with the cream flower paste. Unlike some of my other flowers, I haven't started off with white this time. I could have done if I wanted a paler one. So what you need is a strong wire for your central column. So what I've done here is I've got a 20 gauge wire, and I didn't have any white wires, so what I've done is I've covered it with some white stem text, because this is going to go inside the column, and if it shows through, if you use the green without covering it, it can show through your paste. So I've covered it in white stem text to avoid that. So first of all, I'm going to show you the mould one. I'm just going to do this and take it off the wire and then do the other one, because this one I've already got a dry one ready. So start off with a ball of paste and roll that into a sausage and check it in your mould to see whether it fits or not. That's probably a little bit too much paste. I'm just going to take a little bit off of that. Although it fits into the mould, remember that this part is going to squash it down, so you don't want it quite full. So that's fine, is that? So that into the mould, put the top on, give it a good press, and then that will come out of your mould like that. Now what I didn't do there was to put the wire in first, which is what you should do, so we'll do that again. For anybody that hasn't watched my videos before, when anything goes wrong or I forget to do something, I don't cut it out of my videos, I leave it in. Right, so make your sausage of paste, it's going to go in there. Let's make that a little bit longer. Just measure it in your mould, that's nearly it. So if you pop your wire into it, screw that in, and you need to get it as far back in your paste then. What you need to do then is you need to make like little wings on the side here, so if you just get it between your finger and your thumb and just pull that out like that, and then that wants to curve over at the top, so if you curve that over, bring that round. So basically what you're aiming for is like a cobra's head, and now squash that down at the bottom to make that a little bit thinner like that. Okay, so we'll take that off and we'll go back to the original method, which is the way that I was taught when I first started making orchids, when I did these in class. So start off with your ball of paste, roll it on one end into a long teardrop, and then the wire goes into the bottom part, the narrow part, and keep it as far back as you can again. Then just get it between your finger and your two first fingers, roll it down onto your wire like that, leaving this thick part at the top. Get your ball tool and go in to the top like that, keep your finger behind it, squash that round like that, and then what you do then is, with your finger and your thumb, pull that side piece out like that to form the ear or the gills or whatever it is on a cobra. I'm not going to be precise about that, you can make up your own mind about that. Pull that out. Right, so then you can set that to one side to dry. Now the next step is, I've got one here that's dry, this is the one that I did in the mould. I need a tiny ball of paste, and I mean tiny, like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my glue, wherever I've put it, moved it again, hiding behind the orchid. Tiny little bit of glue just on the top there. It is actually more to the front, it depends on how far you curve it over, so just make sure you've got your little ball, pop that on top there. That's a bit big, is that, so I'm going to halve that. It only wants to be small, does this. And I'll come back to the real orchid in a minute when I've done this, just to show you what I'm doing. So that goes on top of there like that. Oops, stick it to my finger. And then if you get your Dresden tool or something with a sharp end, you could use the back of a knife or whatever, and then just push that down in the centre like that to make a little groove in it. I don't know if you can see that close up or not. And what that is on the actual orchid is this little piece on the top here. And it's one of the areas where you get the pollen there, and down in the throat there's another piece down there which we'll come on to later. So I'll just pop that to one side now, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the throat part of the orchid. should have my silk veining tool on here somewhere. Wherever I put it. I had it here when I did all my blue to Peter bit, and I've probably put it away. So just get that out. No, it's not in there, so it's on here somewhere. Sorry people for wasting time here. I'm just going to go off and come back on again when I find it. Right, I'm back. Found it. As usual, it was underneath something else, but there we are. It's one of the things that you have to watch out when you're doing your bits of work, is that you get all your tools all in one place, ready to use. So I'm just going to roll out a small piece of paste. That's just about the right size for that, and cut that out. You don't want to go too thin with your paste, because they are quite fleshy, but we don't want it too thick either, if that makes sense. Because when you do thin edges and things like that, you don't want a groove around the edge of your paste if you can. Now when it's a little bit thicker like this, normally we do it going round like that. This is one of the reasons why I'm using a ball tool instead of a dog bone tool, because a lot of students have difficulty with it, but you can use it in two different ways. You can go around like that, and then if you have difficulty doing it, rather than doing that, if you get it sideways and roll it round like that, which is a method that we use when you were using cold porcelain, which doesn't tend to thin as easily as flour paste does on the edge. That's one way of doing it. So all I've done is I've just thinned this bottom part, because this is the part I'm going to stick to the column. And then if you get that on your hand with your nodules at the top, get your silk veining tool. You can use this on your petals if you haven't got a veiner, and pop that in the centre and roll out in a fan motion, like I've done with quite a lot of other things, like that. Okay, and then get the top part on the edge of your finger and then go around again, keeping the point up in the air and just doing little sections at a time, and frill the edges. The reason I'm frilling the edges is because the petal needs to curl back, and if you don't do this, it's difficult to shape your petal. I don't want it over frilly, because we're not doing a Cymbidium Orchid, which is a lot frillier, which I'll do at a later date. That's one of the orchids I haven't got, so I can't show you a picture of a real Cymbidium one, because I haven't got one yet. I have a lot of orchids of various different types, but that's one I haven't got. They are quite expensive. Right, so once I've done that, the next step is to glue down the sides. So we're going to glue down the straight sides here, from just where the little lobes start. And then if you get your column that's already dry, don't forget this needs to be dry before you do this. And then if you pop that in the centre, and then if you just pull the side pieces up round the back of the column like that, you can let that bit go once you've got on. On some of them I've gone slightly offside because I've gone a bit too high up, but there we are. And just wrap that round the back like that. And then the next thing to do then is, if you just get over your finger and just curve the edges back like that, all the way around. Then you can set that off to one side to dry. Now I have got one here that I've already dried. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to make the it's like a little tongue that's down in the centre there of the orchid. Now for this, and this is where this comes in handy, I've showed this before, the size guide. I've used a piece of paste that's round about a number size 2 on this. So I'm just going to roll a ball of paste to measure it. That's a bit big. Take some of that off. That just nicely sits in there. Get rid of that out of the way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll that into a sausage. Thin it down at each end. Down in the centre of the throat there. You can see, I don't know if you can see that or not. And then you get your piece of paste and just pop that onto the glued part there, like that. Then get your Dresden tool, and you want the thin end, this end here, and then just press down the centre like that, in and in, and bring it down. Whoops, that slipped to one side. Just redo that again. It's a good idea to get your thumb or something underneath as well, just to support it when you're doing this, because you don't want to break it. There we are. So that's the tongue done inside there. Let's pop that to one side to dry. Now then, I need some more paste for the next bit, because now I'm going to start making the sepals and petals for this. So I'm just going to pop that throat out of the way and just put those two cutters there. I'm going to put some white fat on my board again. Whenever you're rolling paste out, it's always a good idea to put a little bit of white fat on. You don't want a lot, just enough so it'll stick and it's not going to move around, because once you start rolling it out, you don't want to touch your paste. Leave it on the board. And if you've got the groove side of the board, which a lot of people find easier to use, unlike the little tool that I'm going to do, then roll it out on that side. Just knock my glue over, and I'm going to roll out a long strip like that. I'm just going to widen this out a bit. If you haven't got a groove board and you haven't got a groove rolling pin like I've got, then roll it out, and then you need a small rolling pin to roll the groove out. So you'd roll out to one side like that, roll out to the other side like that, leaving a thick piece down the middle layer. So just roll it out, and then you've got your ridge there to get your wire in, because you need something to get your wire in. But I'm not doing that, so let's just roll that out again. Just thought I'd show you that bit, just in case you haven't got any of these tools. Doesn't mean you can't do it if you haven't got the tools. You can always make templates using some card or something like that, but I would recommend, if you're going to do a template or something and you're going to repeat it, use it more than once. If you use something like a margarine lid, plastic lid off of something like margarine or anything like that, you can make your templates with that, and then you can use them over and over again. You can also clean them if they get soiled as well. Right, I'm going to use my little trusty tool to make my grooves up my paste. Then I can cut all my petals all out in one go. So I need some 26 gauge wire, so I'm going to use 2 wires. I'm using 3rd length wires for these because I want the wires to be long enough to give me substance on the back, because if you look at the stem on the back of the orchid, it's quite fleshy. So by the time I've attached these to the 20 gauge wire, it will make the back quite fleshy. And then all that put together in your spray will give you the thickness for the actual stem that the orchids grow on, because they grow on a stem and then you get all the orchids coming off the stem on those. What have I done with my cutters now? There we are. Don't mind me talking to myself, I do this a lot. It's one of the drawbacks of living on your own. I talk to the cat as well, not that he listens, but if you don't have anybody else to talk to, then I'm ignoring that. Right, I want veiners. Right, so I've got my veiners there. So I'm going to cut out 3 petals using the narrow petal. Repeat a bit yesterday, ready as I do prepare for any videos that I'm going to do, so you don't have to watch me doing everything. Quite often I only do one of each petal because it gets a bit boring watching you do loads and loads of petals, and you don't need to see that, because all you need to know is how to do each petal and how many you need of it. As long as you've got a pen and paper with you, you can write all these things down. Then when you come to do it, you can get the information. While I'm on that, talking about going back to doing templates and things like that, if you've got any sugarcraft books and that, a lot of them have templates in the back of the books for petals and things like that. So if you want to make templates for cutting out petals and you don't have the cutters and things, you can generally use that. And if you haven't got them, if you go to your library, you can find a lot of the books in there. Alan Dunn's books, they're the ones I use quite a lot in when I'm teaching in classes, particularly his later books and that have a lot more information in when they're doing them. Some of the early books, I know that he had problems with editors editing things and missing important parts out. The newer books have a lot more information because apparently he has a lot more editorial input with making sure that all the correct information is put in, because there's no point in demonstrating something if you're not going to give people all of the details, otherwise you can't finish the job, can you? Right, so done that. So they need to go onto your pad. Then with your ball tool or your dog bone tool or whatever you're using, then thin your edges down. Takes that cut edge off. Now some people in some videos do put them into the veiner first before they thin the edges. I prefer to do it this way because you're not taking the veining away from the edge of your petals. And when you're using a veiner, there's no point in doing that and then finding you're missing half of the pattern on the edge of your leaves and petals. So I thin the edge of the petals first, or the leaves, and then put it into the veiner. Then you get the full effect of whichever flower or leaf it is you're doing. And the reason I do that is because the veiners that I use, and it depends on which, if you look around for the correct type of veiners to use for whatever job it is you're doing, these are actually curved, but that's the way the petals are, but unfortunately the cutters don't go that way. So just bend your wire before you put it into your veiner, because it's got otherwise your wire can come out of your paste if you don't do this. Pop that in, give it a good press. That's already shaped your petal, and if you just go down it, thin it down at the bottom, and then just give it a pinch at the end, like that. And then that needs to go onto your bobble foam, in between the grooves like that. So we'll just go through those again. Bend your wire into your veiner, top on, press. Cup your petal up, bring it in at the bottom. The reason for bringing it together like that at the bottom, with any flowers that you put in petals together like lilies or any that type of flower, you'll find that your petals will go together a lot better. You'll find when I come to assemble the orchid what I mean. They go together a lot better if you cup that round. If you don't cup it round, then they don't sit right. Now this is the wide petal. I'm using a different verna for this one. So again, cup your wire, make sure your groove is on the back, that's the back of the petal, down into the verna like that, and pop that on. Give it a press, that comes out already shaped, bring it together at the bottom so it fits round, and then nip it at the top like that, then onto your foam. Now what I'm going to do with this is, because not everybody's got vernas, I'm going to do this without the verna. So again, go back to your silk verning tool like I do with a lot of the other petals that I've done in all my other videos. Start from the centre, roll out in a fan shape like that to get your detail, and then if you just get it between your finger and thumb and just bend your wire and cup it just the same as I've done before, give it a little tweak at the end, cup that like that, and then into your foam like that. Okay, so that's all your petals made, your throats made, they're all off to dry. So the next step then is colouring and assembly. So I'll just get those wires out of the way and those tools out of the way. Now on here I've got some of the colours that I've used to put the flower together. I'll just turn that round that way. And what I've done with all of my petals, I've already coloured some, so I've got some dry ones here. Those are the narrow petals, and then I want 2 wider petals that I've got already made. So I'm going to start off with these first, just get those out of the way so I don't get the colour on that I've got there. Just be careful that you don't get any colour where you don't want it to be, because it stains and you can't get it off if you do that. So the colours I'm using here, because I haven't got a cream, I'm using a lustre dust to dust all over. The reason for that is because they are quite waxy looking, our orchids, and I find that the lustre dusts tend to work quite well, so you want a cream lustre dust to dust it with. And the one that I'm using here is Mother of Pearl from Edible Art. And that's the colour of it. You do get a little bit of glint of other colours when it catches the light. So what I'm doing is just dust all over, front, back, and we'll set that to one side. So you do that with all of your narrow ones as well. That's a wide one. When I edit this video, I'm thinking about putting some background music in, so I haven't done that before, but I'm going to try it this time and see if it works. If it doesn't, I can take it out. But I just thought, when I've got the what they call pregnant silences, when I'm doing this and not talking to you, then you've got something to listen to, haven't you? But we'll see how that plays out when I come to edit this video before I upload it onto YouTube. As I said before, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see what I'm going to do, and make any comments that you have about anything that you would like to see, or anything you're not sure about. If you want to ask a question or anything like that, then please do get in touch. I'd like to hear from you, and if you've got any questions about anything, then please ask away. Right, so once I've done that, I'm going to come back to the throat that I've done, and I'm going to dust that as well, because all of the components in this need to be dusted with the cream to start off with before you start adding any other colours. You don't need a lot of powder on your paper towel. A little goes a long way, and as I've said before, it's onto your brush, off your brush. You see how you're just catching the light and you're getting that sort of like a pinky glow on it. I think it looks quite nice. Particularly when you're doing plain flowers on anything for a wedding cake or anything like that, rather than just doing it with bog standard plain colours, it's a good idea to just add that little bit of an extra glint in it. It just makes it look more attractive. I know it's not realistic, but I mean, we are making sugar flowers to go on either a celebration or a wedding cake, so you want it to be attractive when it catches the light, you know, to make it look like a little bit different. Now the next thing I'm going to do, now I'm using quite a deep colour here. The colour that I've used is Garnet from Edible Art. There is another one that's a little bit more purpley than this called Blackcurrant, which is another good one. I couldn't lay my hands on that, so that's why I decided to use this. And what I'm going to do is, because there's, if you look at the edge of the petals, there's sort of like a background of sort of like a pinky colour to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by going round the edge and pulling that down. The flowers, they can see part of the back, particularly on the throat of this sort of flower, but I do like to finish them off both sides anyway. Right, so I'm just going to pop that to one side, and before I go on to that, I'm just going to finish off my petals. So I'm going to take they're the soft ones. Now on this orchid, I'll go back to the picture again. If you look at the petals on the orchid, there's only a bit of pink on either side. So it doesn't matter which way around you do it, because they're all different on the plant. I'm just going to go down one side and do the same thing as I've just done on the throat, like that, just to pull a little bit of colour in. You don't necessarily have to do your orchids this colour. I'm just showing you this particular variety, but I mean, if you get a book with orchids in or something like that, again in the library, or if a florist has got them in, have a close look at them. So I'm going to do one that side, and then I've done one the opposite side, like that. These are ones I've already done. And then I want the wide one. And again, the wide one, I'm going to do the opposite side to that one that I've done there. Go down there, like that. And as well, don't forget to do the back again. I don't know whether I did it on that one. I'll just have a look at that one that I've just done too. Sometimes I forget when I'm talking to do what I'm telling you to do. Do as I say, not as I do, as they say. Yeah, I have done the back of that one. Right. So, I've got the petals done. We've got the detail done on that. We don't need to do anything else with those petals now. I'm going to come back to the throat now, because this is where most of the work is on this type of flower. Now, I've got a smaller brush here that I'm going to use for the yellow. And what I'm going to do is, if you go into the centre there and just put the yellow on that little lip down the centre, and also on the top there. This is the part where the insects go for, particularly bees and things like that, to get the pollen and cross-pollinate all the different flowers. So there we are, we've got the yellow part. Now then, the next part is the painting bit. Again, I'm using the same colour, and as I said said before, what I do is I use the lid of the pot that I'm using because I don't like to waste anything, and if you're going to use a colour over and over again, you use your palette, you're not wasting anything, so you're not having to wash it out and wasting your powder. So put a bit of powder in your lid like that. Then when you finish, you just let the alcohol evaporate off. Don't use water for this because it'll affect your paste. It'll make it sticky and it can collapse. So always use an alcohol of some type. If for religious reasons you can't use gin or vodka or anything like that, then you need isopropyl, which we use in sugarcraft for doing things like that because it evaporates and leaves no trace behind, so it's quite safe to use. But people aren't necessarily going to eat the flowers anyway, so I mean, it doesn't really matter, but just if you are bothered about things like that, then that's what you should do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start doing around the edge, and all I'm doing is just pulling it in, not going right to the edge, sort of fairly close to the edge with the colour. I think I'm doing this a little bit better than I did on the one that I've already done because I didn't get too much liquid in it, and it's coming out a little bit darker, so it may not be exactly the same as the others, but like I said, if you look at the flowers, they're not all identical. Nothing is perfect in nature, as I keep telling all my students, so I mean, I'm not good at painting, so some of the detail that I get may not be as accurate as it is on the flower, but it doesn't really matter because it's the overall effect that you want to get. So once I've done that, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start putting some little blobs of colour in that merge into, just need a bit more isopropyl in there. These little shot things come in handy for doing this sort of job. What have I done with my top off of it? Put it down somewhere, never mind. So we can just pop that to one side and get rid of the colours. Now the other thing that I haven't done is, as you notice, I've got some green on here. What I've done with the petals is I've dusted a little bit of green down the back like that. So all you need to do with that is, with your brush, a bit of the light green, get your brush sideways like that and just give it a waft down the back like that. You don't need to go all the way down the back, just give it a little bit of green on the back. And that's because the petals started off green when they're in bud form before they opened up, and that's just the last bit of green that's showing on the petals as the flower opens fully. You learn a lot about botany with me when you're doing flowers, because I think it's important that you need to know about the flower that you're doing. There's my top off of me shot thing. Just get rid of that out of the way. Oops. Bring these petals down that I've already done there. Where's the other one? There. Got one missing. one somewhere. Never mind. I just haven't put. I'll put some pink on that one. Right, so that can. Somehow or another, I've missed one. So I've always got some spares because I make plenty of bits and pieces ready, just in case. And just give that a waft over the back with the green. Ah, there we are. So that's the two wider ones and the narrow ones. Right, so what I need now is some light green tape, and for this I use Nile green when I can find where I put it. It's the one thing I haven't got out ready for my demonstration, so excuse me while I find where I put my tape. Right, found it. That's the lightest green in the stem text range. A few different greens. There's another. Just found another roll there as well. You might have known it'd be right under my nose when I find it because I have lots of bits and pieces knocking about. You might trust a little machine to cut it in half. Right, so once you've done that, then we need to start that off underneath your throat of your petal. I'm just going to adjust my camera up a little bit, just so you can see what I'm doing. And I don't get any complaints at the bottom telling me that you can't see what I've done. So, start off with one petal. And what I've done is, you don't have to do this because it isn't like that on the real orchid, but so that it can be seen, I put the pink side so it's facing this way, so it will be seen. If I did it the other way, if it goes around behind the throat, you can't always see that, and I sometimes think that's a bit pointless, even though in nature that's the way it is. Where's my other one? I've got them all done on the same side, haven't I? Right, so one of them is going to be behind, never mind. Put that in on that side. Now I'm going to bring the petals up like that so they stay where I want them to be, apart from the fact I can see what I'm doing. But because this is an orchid that's just opening rather than fully open, I like the petals to sort of not be too flat, if you understand what I mean. Then we'll put in the third petal, which is going to go in facing the column. And then I'm just going to tape down a few inches so that those stay put, they're not going to move around. There's two reasons why I do that. Number one, to stop the petals from moving around, and also it helps to for the wires on any petals that you add in afterwards to grip to the central wire. So if you put that in underneath there like that, put that in the wrong place. That goes down in between those two petals then. I've just knocked a bit of petal off, but it's not going to be seen when I get that in. They are quite brittle at the base there, so just be careful when you're putting your petals in. Bend your wire down like that so it's at an angle, and then just feed that down in between. If you have to do, just open up your petals so you can get that in. These are the petals that are actually inside the bud before it opens. The three petals that we've got that I put in first, these two and that one, are the ones that form the outside of the bud. Right, so we just tape all the way down. And I do this fast, and a lot of people can't do this, but once you get used to doing it, you will get faster at doing these sort of things. So I'm just going to open it out a little bit, like that. So there we have the orchid. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put them into a spray to put them all together the way that they grow in nature. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself another 20 gauge wire. I can use the green one this time because it's going to be covered with all of the orchids. You could make some buds to go on them. They are sort of like a long sort of pod with 3 sides, and then you can groove them with the tool. I will do one afterwards just to show you what I mean, but I don't put them in because I think they look a little bit ugly when you're doing them in sugar. I think it looks much nicer if you see the flowers either partially open or fully open in any sprays that you do. Flowers that have got smaller buds on, like little filler flowers and things like that, are fine because they're quite small. I just think with the bigger flowers sometimes it's probably better to leave the buds out than it is to have them in. So I'll just get my orchids over that I've already prepared. And I've got 5 orchids here. I tend to do them in groups of 5. Because I think odd numbers look better than even numbers. If you put 4 in, they look a bit odd. And quite a lot of plants and that in nature have are in groups like that. So I'm going to leave probably about 2 inches of the stem and then put in the wire. I'm probably only going to need half of this wire, so I'll probably cut half of this off, I think, because if you've got a lot of wire in the way, then it can get in the way when you're taping things together, because your other stems are going to form the rest of the stem as you come down, if that makes sense. Right, so just bend that out, and then I'm going to bend this a little bit so that that can go in down here. Now they don't go in any particular pattern down the stem, you know, like left to right or anything like that, but it depends what you're going to use the flowers for as how you present them. But you can decide that once you've got all your flowers into your spray. I mean, a spray with 3 orchids in like that would be nice on a cake. It just depends on, like I say, what you're going to do with them once you put them all together. But on the actual stem of this type of orchid, you do have quite a lot of orchids on a stem. So I'm going to do as it is in reality. It's a big word for a Thursday morning, isn't it? We're not talking about any of the reality programs when we're talking about this. For anybody that's watching later on, we're just coming to the end of lockdown in the UK, so things are starting to ease a little bit now and everybody's starting to feel a little bit better. But people will be watching these videos at any time really, so you may not know that, but this is probably history by the time you get to watch this. I'm just going to come up a little bit because I need to tape that in a little bit higher up. There we are. That's it. So once you've got all your flowers into your spray, then you can adjust them however you want them to be. So there we have it, a spray of Cymbidium Orchids. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you'll come back and see me soon. But just before I go, I'm going to show you the bud. Now normally I would do this with green paste, but I'm going to do it with the cream paste to start off with, because I did promise you that I would show you how to make a bud. And they are, as I say, they are quite big, so I'm going to start off with a fairly large ball of paste. This is one of the reasons I don't like doing them in, just get this sort of, got some cracks in that. While I'm doing this, don't forget to hit the bell at the bottom to be notified when I upload new videos, and again, leave comments in the comment section, and the number of videos I've done, I'm looking for new ideas for things that you'd like to see me do, so please, please, please give me some suggestions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll this into, sort of partially into a sausage, put the wire in, like that. Now you could do it with a hooked wire, if you want to do it the other way around. Just so it doesn't come out, use a hooked wire. So straight through your paste, like that. Out the middle, bring the hook down into the paste, like that. And then if you taper it off at the top end like that, and at the bottom end, like that. At that sort of stage, you're sort of very similar to a lily bud. And then, because this is, what I do is I flatten it down like that, and then I just pinch it over the back. So you get this sort of like a triangle effect. So you've got like a flat side, and a flat side. And then if you get your cutting wheel, and then just score it down like that. Going round a bit like that. So you, and then do that on each of the sides. That represents the veining that you get on your petals when they open out. So basically this would be the back part of the petals, like I said, where I put the green on the. So there we are. So we've got that three-sided effect. Basically that's all they are, but like I say, I don't particularly like the buds on things like orchids and that, so I don't bother with them. So that can come off, and I can use the paste again another day. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you'll come back and see me again soon. So there is my spray of Cymbidium Orchids. Look forward to seeing you in the next video, and take care, stay safe, goodbye.